Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, the Battleship staff has been invited to Wilmington, North Carolina to visit the Battleship North Carolina. Unlike New Jersey, which appears as she did in her final condition in the 1990s, Battleship North Carolina looks almost exactly like she did during World War II. She was decommissioned in 1947, shortly after the war ended, and with very few exceptions, is in her wartime configuration. One of the spaces with the biggest differences is here in Crew's Mess. Today's video is sponsored by Rustic & Main. Rustic & Main make rings like this one made out of reclaimed wood. In particular, they have rings that are made out of the teak wood deck from Battleship New Jersey and also from Battleship North Carolina. So whichever one is your favorite, you can get a ring from them. Check the link in the description. So, nowadays you come to Battleship New Jersey's mess and there are, it looks like McDonald's style seating with these little chairs attached to tables that are permanently fixed. Well, during World War II, this was the main recreation space for the crew, and it was important for the tables and chairs to be removable. So most ships, including the battleships, had tables and benches like these right here. And they're not bolted down anyway. We can move them to turn this into a wide open area. There are racks in the overhead, like this one above me, that can hold the benches and tables when not in use. That's very important. These ships were designed for around 2,000 guys, but during the war, with all of the extra anti-aircraft guns and radars that were added that weren't part of the original design, they had to increase the berthing capacities of these ships. So where do you put all these extra guys? Crew's Mess. We normally think of battleships as having enough beds for everyone, but that's not true during World War II. They didn't hot rack though. During boot camp, everyone was still issued a hammock as if it was the old sailing navy. And so you could sling hammocks here on the mess decks from hooks like this one. We still have the remnants of some of these fittings in the overhead in our mess decks if you're doing shipboard archaeology. But it's much better to come out to a World War II era configured ship and see them here. In addition to the non-fixed seating, Battleship New Jersey would have also had benches and stools like these built into the side of the ship for permanent seating. And these would have filled many of the after compartments on second deck, and they were all removed. And now we're down to just the two mess decks, whereas before, the better part of the after part of second deck would have been covered with this stuff. So what sort of stuff do you do in these spaces for recreation outside of meal hours if you're not sleeping or using it for eating? So what sort of things did you do on the mess decks when the tables and chairs were cleared away and it wasn't mess hours and people weren't sleeping down here? Religious services is one thing. The battleships often had chaplains assigned. Battleship New Jersey usually had 2 on board. And on New Jersey, there is a permanent fixed chapel built into the mess decks that you can come down and see. That's one of several chapels that the ship had, only one at any given time, but it moved around throughout the ship's career. On North Carolina, there is no specific set chapel, but they had all this equipment that they could bring out of the chaplain's offices, I assume in the library, like on Battleship New Jersey, but I'm not entirely sure. And yeah, if you look back there, there is a rack for prayer books built right into the side of the ship. And it's relatively easy to set up an altar, bring out a little piano, and you can have a religious service down here. If you're doing a large service for the whole crew, you might do it up on the fantail. But this is fine for your daily services. Another use of the mess spaces is for showing movies. Typically, ships would deploy with a handful of movies, and they could trade these out with other ships that they were operating with. By the 1980s, Battleship New Jersey had a closed circuit television system that they could play movies on. But for much of the rest of the ship's career, there was a projector room like this one on the mess decks, which would just project onto a screen. Battleship New Jersey, even now in her 1991 configuration, still has projector screens in the various mess deck spaces. You could also show movies on the fantail, and in the 1950s, the Navy built a deck house structure on the fantail for projecting movies out of towards Turret 3. And that structure is still on the tour route and got adopted into other uses, but it's a small, I don't know, it might be 6 feet square, just after Turret 3. Thanks for watching. What would you do for fun on the battleship without internet, video games, YouTube, or being allowed to gamble for money? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State. For this video, we also received support from Rustic & Main. Rustic & Main makes wood rings like this one out of reclaimed timber. My ring is made out of gold band, teak from Battleship New Jersey, and oak from a reclaimed whiskey barrel on the inside. This is as durable as a regular ring because it's covered in epoxy or resin of some sort. I can't quite tell, but that makes it very smooth. I'm not worried about getting splinters, and it's extremely robust. If you're interested in rings like this made from teak wood from either Battleship New Jersey or Battleship North Carolina, there's a link in the description. There's also a link in the description to Battleship North Carolina's YouTube channel if you're interested in supporting them. Thanks for watching.